Hello and welcome to FI News Review. I'm your host, Susan Choi. This week we are focusing on insect protein. The government of Singapore recently approved the importing of certain types of insects for human consumption. The list includes 16 different types of bugs, including crickets, bees, and locusts. So what's the reason for this new development? Joining me now to discuss further is 𝗟𝗶𝗱𝗲𝘂, Chief Content Officer for the Food Institute. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure to have you. Kelly, break down this news story for us. What is the summary here? Why has the Singaporean government recently approved the importing of certain insects for human and animal consumption?
Well, this might sound like a wild topic on the surface, of course, but Singapore is going to be a really interesting test scenario related to insect protein, which a growing number of people around the world are intrigued by because insects could help reduce world hunger. They're packed with protein and so forth. And when you're talking about insect protein, Susan, Singapore is a really good place to start. That country is much more receptive to food concepts that the rest of the world is hesitant to embrace, not just insects, but also cultivated meat, for example. So Singapore's government approved the import of insects for human consumption and animal feed, and the country released regulations about the import of 16 types of insects that have been approved as food, as Bloomberg reported. They also noted that insects were imported for human consumption must be treated to kill any pathogen, and the insects are only approved to be imported at certain stages of their life. Crickets, for example, are only allowed to be imported during their adult stage.
Kelly, talk to us about the drivers behind this recent measure. I think from that Bloomberg article you mentioned, Singapore has, some goals that they want to achieve. Talk to us more about, the further reasoning behind this recent approval.
Well, the main issue at play is Singapore hopes to produce 30% of its needed food by 2030. They want to reduce their reliance on food imports and boost food security. And they're looking at innovative ways to find food sources for the country. Singapore is such a small country in terms of size that it really lacks much of an agriculture sector. So it currently imports more than 90% of its food. I mean, Singapore is smaller than the state of Rhode Island, and it has the second greatest population density in the world. It's also worth noting, Susan, that while the thought of eating a locust or something along those lines might sound a little stomach-turning to most Americans, the Food Institute did an extensive report about insect protein in 2022, and we noted that eating insects is somewhat common in other countries like Thailand, Mexico, Brazil, and Ghana, for example. Europe has also warmed to the idea recently because insects could help feed those that are struggling with food insecurity, in theory.
Shifting over to the West, into America, Kelly, what do you think are the chances that we could see insect protein actually penetrate the American food market, anytime soon? We know that there have been a variety of insect protein-based products debuting into the American food industry, but haven't really quite taken hold. Kelly, what are your insights on this? Do you think that Americans will be more open to consuming insect protein-based products in the near future?
I would say not really, not in the foreseeable future. Insects have been approved for consumption in North America, actually, but obviously, if you're like me, you've never seen anyone eat grasshoppers as a snack like they do in Thailand. It's just not a concept many Americans are willing and able to wrap their mind around so far. Here's how insect protein has come into play in the U.S. Animal feed. You've already seen Cargill and 𝗟𝗏𝘗 partner for insect-based feed for aquaculture, chicks and piglets, for example. More recently, Tyson Foods partnered with insect ingredients company Protix for a U.S. facility intended to upcycle food manufacturing byproducts into insect protein that'll be used in aquaculture, pet food, and the livestock industry. So in theory, these types of partnerships could help provide a more circular, sustainable value chain. And now if you dig into and read about how this is actually accomplished, of black soldier fly larvae oil being used to feed piglets, for example, might sound a bit unsettling to the average American, but it could very well result in significantly less waste from some of these major food corporations eventually.
Kelly, we cannot let you go without mentioning your faithful contribution to Food Institute research of insect protein. Not too long ago, you bravely tried roasted crickets and you did it on camera. There you go, gulping those down from a glass. Kelly, share with us, what was that experience like?
Memorable, definitely. I tried sharing those crickets with guests to our house for weeks afterwards. They wouldn't try them. So that tells you where America's at, I guess, as far as it goes with accepting insect protein. But they tasted like grape nut cereal, basically. It was not the worst thing I've ever eaten by far. So that was kind of surprising.
I like that. Very interesting field notes there from Kelly Beaton, FI's Chief Content Officer. Kelly, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
And as always, you can check out more of the great content that we offer by clicking on this playlist. Till next time, I'm Susan Choi. Take care.